or even something as simple as reading fluency. There's a way to go visual with students. And when you go visual with students and they have to interact with that rather than just receive it, then there's much higher level thinking going on. The dendrite neuron dance that is so important in that brain gets on fire because they're interacting with it, not just receiving it. And that, again, is part of the process of taking ownership of their learning. That will have an emotional reaction to them that could be very, very effective, particularly when we become involved in it and help them identify the pathway to success that they may need. So that's just kind of a few of the things we could take a look at and think about and engage in as we think about this idea of self-efficacy. I mean, it was defined years ago by Albert Bandura. I mean, look at the date on that. And it's still relevant today, right? Now, there are key words in this particular definition that I really want us to pay attention to, all right? Those key words are organize and execute. Now, we all know that as the brain develops, there's a certain part of that brain that doesn't always have the ability to organize and then execute the courses of action. That frontal cortex, that part of the brain for executive decision-making, rational decision-making, cascade decision-making, that's not fully developed until age, and you can type it in the chat box, until age, until age 25, right? So it's not a surprise to us that students may not be able to do this. But hey, everybody, I just want you to recognize that it's not like you wake up on your 25th birthday and go, ooh, now I get it. No, this is something that we can develop. We can actually accelerate the development of this if we pay closer attention to it. So Bandura, when he did his regression analysis on things that would affect learning, he found that this idea of self-efficacy falls way above the regression line and says, if this is something we can pay attention to with our students, that would really enhance their efforts in school. He identified 4 keys for this. And John Hattie on self-assessment, he would say that self-assessments, teachers would have better luck paying attention to student self-efficacy before they started teaching, which is an incredibly validating concept here. Because look at this. Bandura identified 4 keys that influence our efficacy judgments. I just want you to stop and think and kind of take those in, right? Performance outcomes, vicarious experiences, physiological feedback, and verbal persuasion. If you look at those 4 keys and think about how we interact with kids, if you take those 4 keys and think about the 4 questions of a collaborative team, what do we want students to learn? How will we know they are learning? How will we respond when they don't learn? And how will we respond when they do learn? I think you can see a direct connection to the 4 questions, and certain ones of those questions are very important for kids, right? If we're going to have them continue to grow, and how they affect their self-efficacy. Take a second and just think about that. Go back to this slide right here, right? 4 keys that influence our efficacy judgments. Performance outcomes, positive and negative, have an effect on our efficacy judgments. If I have a positive experience in the learning environment, then it'll increase and positively impact my efficacy judgment. If I have a negative experience in the learning environment, and there's no pathway to success that's denied me, I can't get out of that low negative experience, then I have a performance outcomes that will impact the downward spiral to my efficacy judgments. So that question that says, how will we respond? That's up to every teacher in the classroom to decide, as well as the team to decide how we're going to respond to take a potentially negative experience and make it a positive experience in our classrooms. Dr. Tim Kanold, who one of our keynoters and great gentleman in this work, he says that as a team, every team member should know what happens in each other's classrooms when they pass papers back. That question of how will we respond when students don't learn, or how will we respond when they already know it or do learn, that's a critical moment in a child's life. And that when we say we We mean both the team, but individually, how will we respond? Do we take the right actions in that response? I mean, and I don't think anybody would intentionally take the wrong actions. Don't get me wrong there. I don't, teachers work too hard to try to have positive learning environments for their kids. But there are some things that sometimes happen where students end up with a negative experience and it remains a negative experience. And particularly influential when they have that vicarious experience going on where they're in a classroom and inevitably spend time comparing their performance in light of other individuals around them. I was in a classroom, we were doing some coaching in a classroom, and this is a great, I mean, this guy is a great guy. He didn't come into the teaching profession the traditional way with student teaching. He's on a temporary certificate. And they're great because the district provides all kinds of resources and help, and he is taking it in like crazy. Now I'm watching him, he's a fourth grade teacher, and here's this moment, it happens in every classroom where you're passing papers back to students after they've taken a test. And here's what I saw. First of all, please understand it was a high poverty school, like 96% free and reduced lunch. As he's passing papers back, I'm watching and the kids are sitting in groups. I'm standing next to a group of 6 fourth grade boys, which I'm not sure I'd ever do that, but that worked for him. So, okay, 6 fourth grade boys. As they get their papers back, and this is about the middle of the year, as they get their papers back, one of the boys I see has a 10 out of 10. All the other boys, the other 5 had failed the assessment. They failed the test. They had 5 out of 10 or less. Now, what I saw happen just then was really interesting. I'm just going to carry this story forward. So as they've got their papers back, the teacher says to them, hey, don't worry about your scores. Everybody, don't worry about your scores. We're going to go over the test in just a minute. So there'll be a chance to continue to learn. But I do want to tell you how the class did. So just, you know, how we did as a class. In this classroom, we had 2 students with a 10 out of 10, and we had 2 students with a 9 out of 10. We had 3 students with an 8 out of 10. Everybody else was a 5 out of 10 or less. Don't worry. Don't worry. We'll go over the test in just a moment. Now, if you know about kids and learning and know about high poverty environments and some of the generalizations that are placed in those environments, you could almost predict what happened in that group of 6 fourth grade boys. In the chat box, just to interact in this keynote, why don't you write down, type in there if you would, some of the things that you think happen when that process unfolded in that classroom. What do you think happened in that group of 6 fourth grade boys? So here, just check your answers. Here's what happened, right? The boy that had the 10 out of 10 hid his paper so his peers couldn't see it, because the other 5 boys began to high five each other and celebrate their low scores. And I know that's the stuff that drives us crazy. It makes us frustrated. It causes us to say things like, see, these kids, they don't even care. They're celebrating the fact that they failed the test. And what we failed to recognize in that whole process was that as they were comparing their performance in light of other individuals, they needed to move into a defense mode about their low performance. And they'd had enough feedback over the course of the year to say, you're not very good at this subject, to where now they're beginning to high five each other as a defense mechanism. And it's very typical of students who have a fixed mindset or who are developing a fixed mindset, to where they begin to think about, if I'm not good at this, then I've got to hide and disguise that in some way. So they'll do behaviors that just drive us crazy. And all we needed to do was handle that differently. If we can't move students away from comparing their performance in light of others to comparing their performance to the learning outcomes as quickly as we possibly can, and that's a challenge. I'm not denying it's not easy to do, but it's important to do, is to, when that test comes back, another sheet of paper comes back for students to identify, of the learning targets, what did you get right? What did you get wrong? And why do you think you got those things wrong? To have them interact with that would be really much more powerful and will move them out of the emotional to the cognitive reflection. As Dylan Willems has said, once a student creates an emotional connection to that feedback, you might have just lost them. What you have to do is move them into a cognitive reaction to that feedback. Get them to think about where they were in their learning, what they were successful at, because kids are terrible, absolutely terrible about receiving some feedback and analyzing what that means. They get a score on the paper and they think, well, I'm either good at this or not good at this. And when they think of themselves as not good at this, then they immediately stop the cognitive reaction that's important and just go into the emotional. The other key factor is just the feeling that we get. And just, I think we've all know what that's about, because all of us have taken a test at some time where we knew we did really, really well. And we knew as the papers were coming back, this whole emotional thing, this whole physiological thing was beginning to happen to us. And likewise, we've probably all taken a test where we weren't prepared, didn't think we did as well on it. And there was a physiological feeling coming over us as well in that environment. What's interesting, and we'll see this in other research also, is that verbal persuasion and the impact that that has on our efficacy judgments. What teachers say to students, and we know that verbal feedback is probably our most powerful tool. We should be using it much more than written feedback. The verbal feedback, the power of that to encourage, and sometimes the power that exists because it discourages a student in their learning. I don't think anyone would ever intentionally give feedback that would create a fixed mindset, but sometimes we see the wrong kind of feedback being delivered to students, and we need to be much more aware of what that should look like.